Hey guys, Ryan Gill here with Hunt Primitive, where we entertain, educate, and inspire, and we're working hard to get you where you want to be in your own primitive building and hunting adventures. And I do have something a little bit different for you today, and I'm looking forward to your feedback. So we're going to jump right into it here pretty soon, but I kind of want to pitch you guys some ideas on the direction that you want me to take these specific videos, because I've kind of got a core group of followers that watch just these napping videos, and I want to ask you what kind of content that you actually want. So follow along, hang out to the end, see the type of point that we make, and what we're going to use it for, and then give me some feedback. I'm looking forward to hearing from you. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the piece of rock that I'm working with. Kind of chose this piece because it's big and clunky, and I'm going to have to try to drastically thin this. So I may end up breaking it, and then I'll have to go get a new one, but that's okay. That's not that big of a deal. But I wanted to tell you what this episode's kind of all about, because it's sure you're going to get to watch me nap, and I'll stop once in a while and I'll explain something to you. But I wanted to talk to kind of my core group of followers, and I have no illusions of grandeur that this new potential idea, it's not going to reach the masses, and that's not what it's really about. What it's really about is creating content and a little bit more personalized content for my main core group of followers. So I would say when I put out a napping video or something like that, I've got probably 1,000 to 1,500 really dedicated people that will put my video on and watch it. Okay, well, that was a nice one. That was fun. Got a nice thin and flake there, the size of that one. Love that. And you know, a guy can really only nap so many points. I've got a tremendous amount of instructional videos out, as you guys know, and of course I always say it, and I probably always will, that if this just happens to be the first time that somebody has shown up and watching one of my videos, which happens, and you're like, man, I really want to know how to do that, we've got the flint napping for beginners video, and then even a whole bunch of different flint napping videos, but those ones will really get you going. They're on the the thumbnails are on the screen. Those will get you going. So that's why I don't explain everything, but I will stop and show you some of the things that I'm up to. Like, it wasn't as good as I thought. But what I'm kind of pitching now is I guess being able to put together some sort of content where I can talk to you a little bit more directly, not just instructional, but maybe I'm telling a hunting story, maybe telling you about a project that I'm working on. And I think most people, most of my followers know that I don't do YouTube for a living. There's a nice little flake there for like a little flake point, like a Madison point. Let's set that aside. I don't do YouTube for a living. You know, I build product primarily, you know, at Hunt Primitive. That nice flake. Boy, that's one of those, that's nice. It kind of looks like a blade core flake, but it's not. But that's one of those ones you save that for an incision flake or a knife flake. Hang on to that one anyway. No sense wasting that. But product, back to the, I keep interrupting myself with all the cool flakes. The product has been really the most important part, because when you got people that are paying you for product, you have to prioritize that. And I like making content, and I like sharing what I do with people. I love being a craftsman. Now, obviously, the Hunt Primitive thing, that's, you know, that's a pretty good sized business at this point. It's been full time for a long time, and it's booming. So I can't dedicate a tremendous amount of time to just doing big videos and big projects all the time. So like guys that are, you know, YouTube creators, and that's what they do for a living, they spend, you know, a tremendous amount of time just filming content and editing and all that. And yes, I like to do the hunting videos and bring some of those to you, and then I'm thinking, you know, continuing just doing like 1 or 2 major projects a year. And of course we're going to do the boy, we're really thinning that out nice. We're going to be doing the hunt videos, whether it's a compilation I kind of stopped doing every time I shot a hog, I was making a film out of it, and it's like people just were losing interest. They're like, oh, cool, Ryan shot another hog. And, you know, you can watch that in a short, you know, on social media, realistically. Y'all see me walk around in the woods. I don't need to have a 15-minute video of basically the same thing every time. So I kind of just been hanging on to some of the kill shots. Like when I did the last one, it went over really well. What was it, 7 primitive kills or something that I had just been kind of sitting on for a while. That video went pretty well. And I think that shows me that that's the type of content that folks want to see. So I go out and I'm going to hunt anyway, because we're always putting this stuff into real use. We don't make it just for fun. We're using it. So I'll save that content and I'll put those types of videos out. But then like the larger videos, like the From the Earth video, that, you know, that takes a lot of time to put something like that together. And I said, your average, you know, YouTube creator, that's what they do all day, is work on stuff like that, work on making content. And that's not, we got a weird, like a natural fissure type thing in there, so I'm hoping it doesn't continue. I hope it just nap it out. But anyway, that's what normal content creators on YouTube do, is they create content and edit it, and you know, they're monetized and have a Patreon and all that stuff. And you know, sure, we monetize the YouTube videos, not so much because I want the money, but because YouTube wants to make money. Therefore, they're kind of willing to show it to more people if they've got some skin in the game, you know. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't monetize anything. And I don't care about the Patreon. Like I said, we make money through the business, through selling the product. So I don't necessarily need people to donate to a Patreon for it. And I get why people do it, so I'm not knocking them. But basically what I'm rounding about again to saying is, that's not the direction that I take the channel. Is I don't just create content all the time because that's my job. The job is to build the product. And so doing these big projects like From the Earth, they take a significant amount of time, and I like doing them. Or like you know, one of the original ones, the shoot going back to all the way either like the Snakewood deer hunting video, or the first bison project, the Hunting the Ancient Bison. I love those, and I think that they are really, really important. But time just simply does not allow for me to create multiple of those a year. And I would like to just continue to do one, possibly two, maybe like a hunts compilation video a year, or maybe 2 of them, depending on, you know, how many kills we get into, that kind of stuff. It's been a good year. I mean, I've got 8 big game kills just this year alone with sticks and rocks. That's a pretty good year. You know, possibly do 2 compilation videos of the hunts, and then 1 larger project like a documentary or a cinematic video like From the Earth. So what I'm kind of getting at is I'm asking you guys what it is you would kind of want to see, but also letting you know that I have to limit those choices to just 1 or 2 a year. And what I am thinking is I can do a video like this, you know, almost every week. I would say it's reasonable to do a sit down and nap a point, you know, nap a blade, whatever it is I kind of have to do for work anyway. I can sit and then just talk to you guys. Been thinking about doing questions and answers, and possibly even having somebody call in once in a while and talk. Been thinking about just telling a hunting story, maybe. You know, stuff that maybe you've watched the video, say like the elk hunt or something like that, but to be able to actually go through and tell the story, sometimes it gives a different perspective. You know, it's kind of like when Fred Bear, you know, he'd have his, you know, shows that you now can get on, you know, DVD or whatever, but they were on, what, ABC or whatnot in the movie theaters back then, you know. But then you would hear his campfire stories, and it gave a totally different perspective. And so, you know, thinking I could be napping and basically telling you hunting stories from different hunts, and many of which have never been filmed at all because they were done long before I was even carrying a camera. So I would be able to create that kind of content. Then, you know, folks can write down in the comments, like I'm hoping you're going to do on this one. You can ask some questions and whatnot, and I might be able to direct you to some particular videos I've already done, but I may be able to answer some of those questions while I'm working on something like this. And then the possibility of, we'd have to test that out a couple times and see how that goes, but I could set a phone up next to the microphone on the camera and have somebody call in, and they can ask questions, and I could have a conversation with them, and you guys would be able to listen in on that, and then possibly some of you might even be able to call in at some point. I'm sure we'd have to have some sort of way to figure out if it would be a good conversation or not. But I don't know. I guess that's kind of what I'm asking you guys is this, and it would kind of be along these lines where I'm sitting here working on something, and you can see some progress if you're watching it. And if you're just listening to it, kind of like podcast style, you know, you hear me napping in the background or whatnot, you'd have a conversation to listen to, or you'd have, you know, questions and answers or story time or who knows what all. So that's really what I'm kind of asking, is for you guys to write down in the comments and let me know, is that the kind of thing that you would want, you know, is listening to me chat about. Now, I say that, and obviously with the caveat, I'm going to already have some jerks going to jump on and like they do once in a while, and they're like, you talk too much. We don't care about you. You just make the point already. Get it done. It's like, that's not my normal follower. And I got it. If you want me to sit in perfect, absolute silence and nap a point, I can do that, but I have a feeling there's not going to be a whole lot of people that actually want to watch that. Maybe I should do a whole video just on that to see, but I don't know. I think being more personal about it and talking to you about hunting stories or problem solving, or, you know, sometimes it's, you know, issues I've run into, like some, you know, times I'll talk to somebody about, you know, how long it took me to really get my first kill with a stone point. You know, that stuff's relatable to people. And although I've got a lot of videos teaching this kind of stuff, maybe it hits different if it's more in, you know, conversation mode. So that's kind of what I'm pitching to you guys, is drop it down in the comments. And this one will probably teach me quite a bit, you know, if the majority of folks are like, no, just keep doing the instructional napping, show us what you're doing, that's what we're here to watch, you know, that's fine. I'm not saying I'll never do one of those again. Of course, I'd label it as such and be like, this is what we're going to work on today, and I would title it differently if it's more, I don't know, questions and answers or podcast style or whatever. We'd figure out how to do it. So I'm not saying it's one or the other. It's more in addition to, or mixing something in to where, you know, once a week maybe it is instructional, and maybe the next week it's a call in, and maybe the next week it's a story. I don't know. Boy, I almost gotta be careful. I'm trying to make a nasty Atlatl point, but I also want to make it kind of robust, and I'm starting to get it a little bit thinner than I actually really wanted to here. And then as I finish the question out, I'll probably talk to you a little bit more about what the point's about, talk to you about a project. But anyway, I guess I will kind of leave it at that. I think you guys are picking up what I'm putting down, so drop me a comment and let me know if that's the kind of stuff that you want to hear. You know, if most people are like, no thanks, then there's no sense in doing it. But I'm always willing to give something a try, and typically what I do is I just look at the analytics. You know, if the comments are bad, or aside from just the couple idiots that show up that are just jerks anyway, or you know, if we're just not getting many views, or the viewer retention is not very good, well, then I know that that's not what people want. And I kind of like the idea too of being able to, you know, talk and tell a story while I'm doing it. You'd be able to, you gotta be kidding me. See, I told you I was getting it a little bit too thin. I should have switched over to indirect percussions. Now I gotta start all over again. That stinks. Doesn't matter. I'll grab another one, and I'll come out, and I'll start it, and I'll finish what I was saying. Alright, that one's got a little dust on it, but that ought to work. Rebuy face that out. At least it's not nearly as big and clunky as the other one. But yeah, so anyway, just drop me a comment. Let me know if that's the kind of stuff that you want, and we'll look at the analytics and we'll see what you want. I said I don't expect it to just reach 1 million people, but you know, if it's what my real followers want to see, then let's do it. And then you understand why when you're like, oh, do more stuff like From the Earth. Like, hey man, I want to, but oh, a lot of work goes into that. I mean, a lot of work. And honestly, there's no pay in it. I mean, YouTube's not paying hardly anything, and then more times than not they take my monetization away on stuff like that because I can't show you real stuff without them getting butthurt. So I'm not there's no money in it for me to do that. I don't get enough views, and whatever the CPM or whatever that's called, however that works, whatever they cost per view or whatever, they don't pay me very much, I can tell you that much. I make the money in the shop, not on YouTube. So I get it. Y'all probably want more content like that. It just doesn't fit in the time slot to be able to do all of that for me, you know, in a day's work. So if this is something you guys want, then we'll do it. But anyway, so let's talk. I'll move into the second spot. I think you know what I'm asking for. And I'll tell you kind of what I'm up to with this. Is I'm just making an obsidian point because I'm thinking about working on, I've actually never killed an animal with an Atlatl in an obsidian point, and I think I mentioned earlier I've already had a really good season. I've killed 8 or 9, now I can't remember which, big game animals already this year. I think must be 9 if that's what's in my head. 9 big game animals already this year. Year's almost done, you know, it's November, but there still might be 1 or 2 more that show up. You never know. Certainly don't really need any more meat, so I'm just kind of working on some other projects. But since I've already killed so many, and I'm not really hurting for any kills, I figured now's a good time to just get back to some Atlatl work, which is usually what I do in the off season anyway. And so I definitely want to put together an Atlatl documentary and give a little bit more context to that. I really enjoy the Atlatl a lot. And so I'm wanting to put some time in for the Atlatl, and I've got a whole bunch of foreshafts made up, but it just kind of occurred to me that I don't even think I've ever hunted with an obsidian point with the Atlatl. Typically, because I'm like, well, they're a little bit more brittle, and it's like, well, early people did. They hunted with obsidian if that's what they had. You just make them a little bit more robust, you know, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. Obsidian's just terribly sharp. So there's no reason not to. In fact, I mean, it's devastatingly sharp. I mean, whenever I shoot a deer with an obsidian point, I mean, those are some good performing points. More times, I would say more times than not, they break, but there's actually a couple now that I've shot completely through, and they've been perfectly fine. I could shoot them again, but it's because I didn't hit anything with them. They just slipped right through the ribs and out the other side. I think 2 deer in particular I've shot completely through with obsidian points, and they were perfectly fine. And then other ones I've shot and hit bone and exploded them, but it still killed the animal, you know. They don't just explode on impact like when you hit a rib like people think. That doesn't really happen. You'd have to hit one maybe really square on. I've never been I've never been stopped with an obsidian point, let's say that. You know, I guess that's the concern that people may have with them, but I've shot plenty of deer and hogs with them with arrows, and have yet to have any get stopped because they were obsidian. Always end up, in fact, sometimes I get just better penetration because they are so dang sharp. So, as I've got a whole bunch of foreshafts put together for my Atlatl set, and I'm looking forward to hunting, I just realized that, man, I don't have any obsidian, so I was like, let me make a couple and put them on some foreshafts, and then maybe I'll lead off with some of those. I showed last year spearing that little hog. It was 40 yards away. It was crazy. I speared that with a nap easy point. That worked out really, really well. And I've certainly speared them with chirp points. You guys have seen that. Killed bison with steel points with chirp points. I don't even know why I said steel points. Never killed anything on an Atlatl with a steel point. It's a little out of context for me. By the time they got steel, really no reason to shoot or to use an Atlatl. Bow and arrow take over real easy once you have steel points. That's one of the things I want to talk about actually in the Atlatl documentary, is the some of the context of why an Atlatl would actually be preferred, even if you have access, you know, to bow and arrow technology. There are instances, without a doubt, that you would prefer an Atlatl, and one that comes to mind is, like I wrote about in the Secrets and Science of Primitive Archery book. If you're shooting real, true, contextual primitive archery gear, so like primitive string, natural shoot arrows, you know, let's just hypothetically say you live in a place like the Plains or some of the western areas that don't have great bow woods. You know, you're talking about shooting, what, a chokecherry bow or a juniper bow or something that's really not a great performer overall, and then shooting, you know, little dogwood arrows or whatever, and you're shooting real stone points, and, you know, everything is contextual. The performance of those sets isn't as great as people think, and if you're primarily hunting bison, there's a lot of advantages to just using the Atlatl, because you have range and a very heavy projectile on a big animal, and you can be relatively accurate anyway with an Atlatl. I mean, you've seen me kill stuff, and I did the killing cans video, and you know, you can. It's not as accurate. It's not as inherently accurate as a bow, that's for sure. And the arrow is a lot quicker, so when you're hunting something like deer or smaller animals like rabbits and whatnot, shooting at birds or rabbits and deer, or, you know, small javelina, that kind of stuff, a bow and arrow is far superior. There's no doubt about that. But if you're talking about truly contextual bows and arrows and hunting bison with them, they're not necessarily as efficient as an Atlatl would be. And I've had that question posed to me before, to say, hey, if you had to go out, you know, tomorrow and start putting together a set to hunt a bison with, but you could only use gear or only use materials found in, let's say, South Dakota. Not a lot for good bowwood there. And you'd say, well, what are you going to make the Atlatls from? Well, we've shown that. You can go down by the, you know, get down by a river, a creek somewhere, even if you had to use willow. But for the most part, you're going to have red osier. You're going to have dogwood. Okay? And you can splice 2 or 3 pieces of dogwood together and make a really good Atlatl. You know, that's nothing. There's nothing wrong with that. It'll penetrate great. You know, you can get 40, 50 yards away from a bison and lob that in there, you know, with a chirp point that either you got found a little pocket of of local chert, or you know, maybe pick some up in North Dakota or Rainy Buttes area, or on the eastern side of the plains, you know, whatever, doesn't matter. And you can get into killing bison, you know, pretty reliably with that, compared to, well, I've got a, you know, had to travel a great distance just to get a piece of choke cherry or something like that to make a bow out of. It's a low performing bow with a natural string, and, you know, not ideal materials for something the size of a bison. And so there's definitely good reasons, and that's one of the things I want to talk about in that video, in that documentary, that the bow and arrow has probably actually been around a lot longer in North America than people realize. I just don't think they had a need for it, because at the end of the day, think about it like this. If you've got a tribe of people that you're going to feed, and you're following herds of bison around, are you really going to be that concerned? You kill a few bison, and I'm not talking about the areas where they're running them off of cliffs and stuff like that. I'm talking about more open territory, you know, not the places where they're running huge amounts off, but even then, consider that. But are you going to be fussing with deer as much if you've got bison? You know what I'm saying? I mean, if you have an opportunity to shoot at a deer or a pronghorn or something like that, well then, sure. Why not? But if... let me get this kind of started here. Good platform to work on. But if you've got bison, then why would you mess with trying to kill something that's so much more difficult? Like, you're going to be out, yeah, the kids will be out hunting rabbits and that kind of stuff. There's no doubt about that, because they're learning. And that's got a lot of value in it. But your real hunters, they're not going to be wasting gear and time on hunting smaller animals that are harder to hit and harder to recover and all of that stuff. When you've got bison, you're just going to put your bison hunts together, go out, collect the meat, butcher the meat, and be done. It's a big project. Okay, so I could see where if there's a lot of bison to be had, and there was bison all throughout pretty much the United States, almost all of it at one point, if a bison's going to be easier to kill and more meat than, say, like a deer, and the Atlatl was actually easier to make and more efficient for bringing home the meat, for killing the bison, then wouldn't it stand to good reason that you wouldn't see the bow and arrow being an overly prevalent type of weapon system? I mean, it makes perfect sense to me. I said you had to just I had to put myself in their shoes and say, hey, this is what you got. You got lots and lots and lots of bison, and you kind of follow the herds around as they seasonally move. So you got that. Be like, are you worried about making a deer hunting set? I'd be like, why? If I've got bison to eat, why on earth would I care about it? I'm saying if I see a deer and it wants to act dumb and give me the opportunity, I'll throw at it for sure. You know, same with an elk or whatever, but if bison's what I'm after, my gear is going to be optimized for bison. So that's kind of the stuff that I wanted to be talking about in that documentary. So that's what I'm kind of thinking here, right? So this kind of conversational napping videos, kind of telling you guys, you can always get like a sneak peek into what's in my mind and what I'm considering doing for projects, and it almost kind of gives you guys an opportunity to weigh in also. You know, let me know what you guys think about it, and maybe you'll be able to drum up some good ideas, you know, things that you want me to test or whatever, and who knows, maybe they'll end up in a video. Wouldn't that be neat? So I'm intentionally trying to not, I'm kind of messing up a little bit here. I'm trying to not thin it a tremendous amount. I want it a little chunkier. I don't want this thing to hit the ground in one miss, and it may break anyway. But I want it to last if I miss, if it's got a little bit of width to it, which it does right now, it's fine. Apparently I got a cut somewhere. At least it's just little. Brush some of this dust off me too, get glass everywhere. We got plenty of meat here, you know what I mean? Plus, I mean, you talk about Atlatl's a big old chunk of missile flying through the air. It penetrates. So I think that's, we're not going to have to worry too much about that. I'd rather it be a little bit more robust. That's why you see a lot of those Atlatl points, they're not super thin all the time. You kind of want them to be a little bit more durable. It's again the kind of thing I want to talk about in a documentary. I think this one's about where I want to be to just kind of finish it out. Clean up the shape here just a little bit. I'm asymmetrical. Decide if I want it to be more rounded to protect the tip. I guess I'll work on taking out a little of this rounding on the side. I don't mind it to be a little rounded for an Atlatl point, but I don't want it super rounded. Kind of make that platform back up a little bit. I'll braid it off good. I said I'm not going for this big beautiful work of art. Although I want it to look nice and I want it to be symmetrical. Don't want it super thin. I should be doing it with antler. Would actually have an easier time keeping it thinner with antler. But I just wasn't feeling antler today. My elbow's been kind of sore here lately. And the copper's so much easier on my elbow. So much easier. Get my elbow feeling better and then I'll get back to doing some primitive napping. Got one or two more little spots right here. Come on. Trashy little areas I'm not loving. So, well, as I'm kind of coming in here, there we go. Got a little better flake that I was looking for. As I'm starting to land the plane on this, and I may even, you know, if I run out of stuff here to kind of talk about, instead of just talking for the fun of it, I may just skip you ahead and show you the end result. But I mean, this is kind of where we're at. This is great for great preform. Like I said, it's not too thick. That's kind of exactly what I'm up to. Now I got to decide if I want to notch it, if I want to make it more like a Dalton style. That doesn't hurt my feelings either. I might do that. Kind of undecided here. I'll take a quick break and I'll think on it and decide what I want to do. Yeah, I decided on that. Since it's a little bit thicker, I don't really want to notch it. And so for that reason, do something a little bit more like Dalton-ish or maybe Paleo-ish. I don't need a big hafting area on this one. I just want to recess it a little bit. I'm not trying to be diagnostic about it and make it exactly something. It's like I'm just kind of making what a Ryan Gill would make to go spear a hog or something with, you know what I mean? Clean that base up there a little bit. I mean, I had no problem chunking that through an animal. You get an edge on that. Throwing off the Atlatl. It seems like the more I practice with the Atlatl, the stronger I get in my throws too, which is good. Sometimes I get a little bit wild with it, and other times I feel really dialed in and it just hits good and hard. And it's fine too. Yeah. Not really trying to bifurcate that base or anything. I'm just trying to make a nice even hafting surface like that and then dull it up so it's good and thin to put on a foreshaft. Really like the replaceable foreshafts. I'm a lot more willing to throw at animals, knowing that if they see me or if I miss or whatever. I mean, sometimes your kill percentage with an Atlatl can go down. There's no doubt, but sometimes too, when you hit them, because it's such a big projectile, you can hit them sometimes a little bit more marginally and really be effective with it because it's such a big point overall compared to an arrow point. So that's almost like in Florida we'd call it more like a greenbrier shape, I guess. I don't know. It's kind of like a transitional paleo to archaic type of point, or an early archaic type of point. Like I said, I don't really care about the style as much as just making something that's a nasty old point, you know? In fact, let's see, it kind of reminds me of something else, and now I can't think of the name of it off the top of my head. Usually I'm pretty decent with typology. There we go. All that haften area up. That's good. Alright, let's put a little bit of an edge on it here. So not so worried about it being perfect, as most Atlatl points are not perfect. You can get away with quite a bit more, you know what I'm saying, with that big mass. If you're throwing a good Atlatl set, little Atlatl sets, I've shown that before, that they really they don't penetrate well. But if you're throwing they call a big man set, well, you can huck a piece of rock through something. And that's what we're after. It's interesting too, one of the things I wanted to talk about in the Atlatl documentary is do a lot of hog hunting, and sometimes people are like, yeah, but there were no hogs back then, they were introduced, and it seems like that takes it out of context for people. It's like, a couple of things is, one, you have to realize that here in Florida I'm not allowed to go hunt deer with it. I would hunt deer 100% if I was allowed to. I've called to try to get like a special use permit or something. And in fact, the guy that's in charge of it, I talked to him, and not only was he not like a delightful person to talk to, he was not very nice about it and really kind of a jerk to me. And he doesn't seem to like primitive weapons at all. And I don't really know what his deal is, but when I talked to him, I was real nice and talking to him about what I was up to and what I was going to do, and he seemed like he hated my guts, and I just have no idea why. But some people are just like that. So they're not gonna, while he's there and involved, I don't have a feeling we're going to be allowed to go do anything like that. So, but hogs, you can hunt hogs on private property in Florida year-round. Now, in public land, you're not allowed to hunt with the Atlatl, but private land you are. So that's why we primarily do hog hunts. But that being said, sure, we didn't have hogs here, but in the Ice Age, or before the Ice Age, and even shortly thereafter, before the megafauna went extinct, we had the flat-headed peccary, and that did live in Florida. In fact, it lived, they found fossils of that pretty much throughout all the United States for the most part. Kind of like they found bison fossils pretty well all over the United States. So we definitely had bison. There's no doubt about that. In fact, there's I don't know if it's a kill site or not. I think it might be. Maybe it's just an association with people, but there's one over in Vero Beach of all places. But there definitely were bison here at different times. The Spanish talked about there being bison even in Florida when they got here. I think they called them cattle because they didn't know, but they didn't bring any in. They didn't really know what they were. They didn't have bison in Spain. But we had those, what are they called, the Patagonias or I think that's it, Patagonus maybe, which was the flat-headed peccary, which is similar in size, I think, to some of like our smaller wild hogs that we have. And I'll tell you what, after going and hunting peccary in Arizona, I know people say they're not related. You can look at them and tell they're dang related. Sure, they're not a pig, but they're without a doubt related. But they act very much like pigs. I mean, you put javelina and feral hog side by side, very, very similar. So it's easy to kind of extrapolate that the flat-headed peccary that we had here would have been probably very similar. Man, that is nasty. Oh, that is nasty sharp. Very similar to the wild hogs that we have today. So actually people would have been hunting something very similar. It's kind of fun to think about that a little bit. That you lose one species and, you know, inevitably thousands of years later get a replacement for something that's actually fairly similar. But anyway, I think that's that. I said, it's not a big beautiful work of art, but I would have no problem chunking that into a hog. Was trying to go for something a little bit more robust. Good chance that that would not break. Might chip the tip or something like that, but I bet you I could miss in the grass or the sand. Decent chance of not breaking that, but I tell you, I wallop that into the side of a hog, it is in big trouble. So anyway, guys, let me know what you think about, you know, doing napping sessions maybe once a week, where instead of just being instructional, we talk about things like today, new projects, new ideas, maybe have some call-in questions and answers. I don't know. You guys let me know. I mean, basically, I'm just doing this for you guys anyway, so you might as well have some input. So, all right, well, I guess we'll read the comments, look at the analytics. We'll see you on the next one.